Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It's PDAC 2021, and of course, still also a virtual event. And it's my honor and pleasure today to talk with Sandeep Singh, the CEO of Osisko Gold Royalties, for an update. Sandeep, good morning to Canada. How are you doing?
Good, Joachim. Good to be with you again.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time. As I could imagine, you are very busy during PDAC, and it's great that you have taken the time to give us a short update interview here. Yeah, Osisko Gold Royalties, I think heavily undervalued to my understanding, to be honest. And you guys had a fantastic 2020. We will talk about that in a minute. But first of all, congratulations on the Malartic underground, which will produce then from 2023 onwards. And you guys have also on the underground production a 3 to 5% NSR. So I'm sure you are happy.
Yeah, no, we're certainly happy. I'll take the congratulations, but I think the success goes to, first and foremost, I think some of the previous Osisko team, our founders who built that mine, put the first holes into Odyssey when they left in 2014 at the time of the hostile. People forget that the first holes into Odyssey underground were in that time period. Didn't get to finish the job because of the hostile in 2014 from Goldcorp, but certainly happy to see Agnico and Yamana having continued that exploration effort, ramped it up more significantly in the last couple of years, and then also done the technical work, pretty significant technical work to make a construction decision off the back of a PEA, which is not not the typical route. But I think it shows you the confidence they have in that asset and the importance of that asset to both those companies. So good news for all of us, and we started to see that they were going this way late last year. Happy to see the announcement. The announcement, frankly, was better than what any of us could have hoped for.
Super. So what could we expect out of that? Of course, 2023, I assume, is like a ramp-up phase, because I saw in your press release that from 2029 onwards, they expect 545,000 gold ounces per year produced until at least 2039. I could imagine that will be even longer. But to me, it looks like that this is the complete, I would say, not lifesaver, but a company saver for the next 20 years for Osisko, definitely.
Well, saver, maybe not, but maker. I think it's a company maker. Our flagship asset. I mean, so the Malartic NSR, the 5% NSR on the open pit, was already the best gold royalty. By best, I mean most valuable gold royalty in the entire sector. It's really just doubled in value. So it is by far the best gold royalty in the entire royalty sector. To have your flagship asset have at least a 20-year mine life, and like you said, plus. Is certainly a fantastic foundation for the company. It sets us up tremendously well for the next 2 decades. So we look forward to that asset continuing to be our flagship. I mean, when you think about it, currently I think 50% of the resources are in the underground mine plan. There's 14.5 million ounces in total. So there's certainly the opportunity for that mine life to extend. They're also talking about significant exploration upside. This year alone, East Goldie will have 80% of the drilling that it's had to this point in its history. And East Goldie is the highest grade zone, which makes up 70% of that mine plan. It's also the area where we have a 5% royalty. So nothing but good news there. It's pretty good place to wake up in the morning, where you have currently 35,000 ounces a year for free from the open pit. Even when the ounces go down a little bit, we still have on average about a 4.5% royalty on the underground, because based on the 3 to 5% split where the ounces are today, it's about 4.5%, and we see a ton of upside to still be added.
Super. So we could say that, let's say, between 45,000 and 55,000 ounces per year is a realistic number for the next X years, right?
No, look, I think the way you have to think of it is there's some overlap between the open pit and the underground, but generally speaking, the open pit will run out. I think it's 2029, so end of this decade. There'll be some overlap with the underground, and then the underground kicks on for the next 10 plus years. So we just expect continued kind of high, steady state, free ounces from Malartic, and a mine life that will continue to grow. Thereafter, I mean, when you think about the mill, the underground will fill about a third of the current mill complex. The mill open pit wise is 60,000 tons per day. The underground will produce 20,000 tons per day. So I think the further upside really, Jochen, is the fact that we still have a 40-cent per ton royalty or toll milling fee basically on anything else that goes through that mill. And you can imagine the operators will be keen to keep that mill filled if they can find the right sources. So good news across the board. You mentioned the point about valuation. I mean, if you take away our equity positions, and you'll know this obviously, Jochen, that we have $1 billion in equity positions in two companies, really. When you look at the enterprise value that's left for Osisko Gold Royalties, you could almost justify it entirely just based on the Malartic royalty. And that ignores the fact that there's another 50,000 ounces a year of annual production today and a lot of growth that's coming on that we've already paid for. So pretty neat time, I think, to be us.
Absolutely. Also, I saw that there is advancement on the Upper Beaver and Hammond Reef, and you have a 2% royalty on that production. That's came out from Agnico. So what is going on there?
Yeah, look, those are both positive surprises. It came out at the same time with Agnico's quarter. Obviously, they were dwarfed by the importance of the Malartic underground story, but I think we were very happy to see progress on both those fronts. Upper Beaver, in the Kirkland Lake camp, a big resource already. They're talking about doing studies, kind of PFS by the end of the year, and perhaps having that pre-feasibility study be the decision point for a construction decision on Upper Beaver, which would be very positive for us. It's one of those assets which is significant, but I think most people forget that it's in our portfolio. Mm-hmm. And then also on Hammond Reef, which is a large lower grade resource in Ontario. Maiden reserves there. I think there's a lot of people who are looking at lower grade resources in Canada again in a new light, given the gold price environment. And they're not pushing forward to build that just yet, but they're certainly improving it. And so both those things are positive for us. I think more globally, what it shows you, Jochen, is the depth of our portfolio. Mm-hmm. I mean, those are two assets which I would call significant, run by obviously a great operator in Agnico, or being advanced by a great operator in Agnico. And again, most people would probably forget that we own those. And if you look in the portfolio, there's a number of other assets like that are being advanced now, that are having exploration dollars spent on them, that are pushing forward in terms of development space progress. So a lot of hopefully positive news to come out of, and positive catalysts to come out of the portfolio.
Mm-hmm, super. And I think also very positive catalyst or positive thing for you to earn a lot of ounces is the development of the Eagle Mine from Victoria Gold, because we saw an announcement, I think it was last week, if I'm correct, that the guidance is now for this year 180,000 to 200,000 ounces, and you guys have also 5% out of that.
We do. We have a 5% royalty on Eagle, run by Victoria. Really happy with their progress last year, and this year is the kind of step change to get to pretty close to the run rate. I mean, they had talked about when they built the mine, 210,000 was the steady state. This year, as you said, they guided to 180 to 200,000 ounces, so pretty close. And they've already made good progress towards that. Their Q4 number was something like 42,000 ounces, which was a 20% improvement over Q3 of last year. So they're making good strides, and we look forward to that added production. You're right. Based on that guidance, that would be between 9,000 and 10,000 ounces. Obviously, 5% of that guidance, 9,000 to 10,000 ounces for us. All of last year, they contributed only about 5,000 ounces, as they were, obviously commissioning and working their way up. So it'll be a nice step change. We put out our guidance before they did. So our guidance of 78 to 82,000 ounces for the year at 97% margins, roughly. Maybe didn't take full account of the progress they were making, but hopefully that's a bit of upside to the numbers that we put out a couple weeks ago.
Super. No, that's perfect. And I think also Victoria Gold has done a tremendous job, because to ramp up such a big mine, you always have some hiccups. This is totally normal. And as far as I know, as I spoke with John some weeks ago, and I think everything is really solved now, and they can really go full throttle. And I mean, 210,000 was the design thing. If they do 195 this year and next year to 210,000, I think we both have no problem.
I won't beat them up. I'm sure you won't either. And I'm sure shareholders will be pretty happy with that step change, because not only when you get the ounces up, which is our primary objective, but the costs come down coincidentally. So something that big in the Arctic to be doing so well, basically 1 year in, I think is a massive achievement. And importantly, the grade seems to be reconciling well. The recovery seems to be reconciling well. They just had some mechanical things that they broke and they needed to fix, and they're doing that. So happy with the progress. Absolutely.
Super, perfect. As we are already sorry, you want to say something?
No, I'll let you go.
Yeah, as we are already talking about your royalties and streams and stuff, I would shortly touch base on Osisko development. You still have 75% around, and you have this beautiful 5% NSR on Caribou and Bonanza Ledge Phase 2 properties, etc. So how is it going with Osisko development?
It's going great. I mean, it's going really well. So that was the biggest strategic priority we had to get done last year. Jochen, I believe you and I talked. Well, we talked this time last year on the air. We talked several times a year, obviously. But
Yes.
when we talked this time last year, I would have told you that was our major strategic priority, is to finish that North Spirit transaction, if you will. And that's what we did in the fall. We announced it in October of 2020. We closed it in December, which was the spin out of Barkerville and one other really nice Mexican high-grade heap leach asset called San Antonio into Osisko Development Corp, run by Sean Rusin and the team that built Malartic in the first place. Well-funded. They've raised now $250 million of capital, and our ownership in that public company is reduced to about 75% today. So we did exactly what we said a year ago, which is we're going to find the right vehicle for Barkerville, and we're going to own less and less of something more valuable, and we aren't building it ourselves. So within the span of a year, we did exactly what we said we would do. We created a lot of value in the process. We now own almost $800 million of equity in that company. I think if I told you last year that we had $800 million of value in our company for Barkerville, you would have laughed at me. But it was a significant asset, and we just needed to find the right home for it. In terms of what's going on now, I think, again, well-funded. Sean has the team and the money to push both those assets forward. There's there's near-term production from one of the satellites, which is that Bonanza Ledge you mentioned in British Columbia. So that will kick in this year and start cash flowing. As well, the heap leach in Mexico, which is as simple as mining projects get. They're never simple, but heap leach, low capex, low cost, high grade in Mexico. Those are relatively easy to do. And they have some stockpile production they can get into this year. They have some ore sitting above ground that they can process, put on a new leach pad. And then the bigger projects in both Mexico and BC are moving forward through permitting and we have a 5% royalty on the entire camp in British Columbia, and we have a 15% stream on the San Antonio asset. So good outcome for Osisko Gold Royalties shareholders from a NAV and value perspective. That was the objective last year. This year, we want to get share price credit for it. And I think we're well positioned to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think also you put out your full year numbers 2020. Let's talk about that because Q4 was also fantastic, but I think 2020 by itself is more important. And you had over 66,000 gold equivalent ounces in revenue. I think $160 million in revenues cash, and the cash margin was 94%. Jesus Christ. What are you going to do with all the cash?
It's a good business, Jochen. It's a good business, and it's running extremely well. I mean, so 66,000 ounces in 2020 in a year that obviously was impacted by COVID, and Q2, exactly. Q3 were impacted by COVID. Q4 we were back to basically our pre-COVID production levels. All the assets are running full steam for us, and now we're back to kind of the growth element of the company, which Eagle, added extra ounces for Eagle coming to that. There's a Mantos expansion that we'll get the benefit of next year, which is another kind of 6,000 ounces coming from our one of our most valuable producing assets. So, we're making more money than we ever have as a company. You mentioned record cash flows. That was with reduced ounces. Now the ounces are all back. The gold price, even at $1,700, is still very good for us based on those margin. Obviously, we get to keep most of our dollars. So we're, the producing portfolio is never been operating better. If you look at the top, obviously the Malartic underground example is a massive catalyst for us. I mean, I can't understate how important that was for us or frankly anybody. You look at Eagle, the ramp up there is significant. Having another 4,000 to 5,000 ounces from the asset this year would be fantastic. Mantos, another 6,000 ounces coming next year from that asset. They're just finishing up the expansion there at the end of the year. It was initially expected to be middle of the year, but they had some normal, construction delays. Plus you add on COVID delays on top of that, basically push it out 6 months. But if you're talking about COVID, delays being 6 months, I think that's a pretty good scenario. So there you have our three highest value producing royalties and streams getting significantly better in the next, right now, basically in the next 6 to 12 months or today. If you go down the list of producing assets, they're almost all getting better. We're sitting in a world where operators are spending, they're talking about free cash flow. They mean it. If you do, you end up spending more money on your existing assets to make them better. There's also a catch-up phase that we're seeing in terms of exploration spending by our partners, I should say, where they've underspent in the last several years. Now they're trying to catch up, and as they do, we're seeing many examples of first reserves being replaced easily, mine lives being extended, expansions being either announced or further justified, and brand new discoveries. So it's a pretty neat time in the company where we're making more money than we've ever had, and we're seeing more catalysts on our assets than we ever had. And I think one last thing I'd say on that is that's kind of free upside that as a company we really haven't had the benefit of historically. When you think of this company being 7 years old since IPO, we were always building a portfolio, and we continue to build a portfolio, but we were building one from scratch. One producing asset 7 years ago, now we have 17. 5 assets in total 7 years ago, now we have 140 plus. And as we were building in a portfolio and taking on new exposure, you basically pay for some version of the asset at that point in time. And then thereafter, anything new that's found, we benefit from disproportionately because we don't have the finding cost and we don't have the extraction cost. And again, Malartic Underground is the biggest example, but it's happening almost at all of our producing assets. So it's a nice time to be benefiting from that upside at the same time as we're benefiting from ounces and gold price.
Super. So if I got that correct, when I look at your balance sheet, you are on a net basis debt-free, if I calculate everything.
Yeah, look, we have, we have cash on the balance sheet of over $100 million Canadian. We make money every week. We have $1 billion on a good day, or even a bad day. We have $1 billion of equity investments, and we have circa 400 million Canadian of debt. So we are net cash positive by a huge margin if you factor in the equity positions. Obviously, those are not immediately liquid, but the idea is now that we created that value is we will look to take some money off the equity positions and reallocate it towards our balance sheet, our dividend, our NCIB, and growth in the royalty and streaming business side of things.
Super. Last question, because you touched already on the dividend, and I get these questions a lot from shareholders. When will the dividend be raised?
It's a good question. And when you look at the business model, more ounces, higher gold price, high cash margin, it's a fair question to ask. Currently, our dividend yield is about 1.5%, which makes it the highest in the royalty peer group. Some of the operators have gone, they've jumped up pretty high, but they do that in phases, right? Their dividends are a lot more volatile than ours. We want ours to only be a straight line upwards always. So we want to make sure it's completely sustainable. I'd say last year was probably not the year to do it for us because we were still spending on Barkerville. It was a finite period of time, but in 2020, we spent about $85 million Canadian on the asset. That spend is now gone. It's Osisko Development's responsibility, and they're doing a great job at it. So with the added ounces coming on, a sustained high gold price, that spend being out of the system, we will definitely find the right balance between growth, dividend, and buybacks, and that's how we're thinking of it, is finding that right balance. But if we do what we say we're going to do this year and the gold price stays relatively similar, our payout on the dividend will be lower than it has been for several years. So we certainly have the ability to bump that back up.
Fantastic, and I can assure you the gold price will be higher.
Look, I think so too. I think it was inevitable that we were going to have a bit of a pullback. I think the pullback's been a little overdone. I think when I look around, I don't think there's anything bad that's happened from a gold price perspective. Obviously, vaccines were going to come in. I'm glad they are. Hopefully, they're effective. The dollar and the U.S. was going to bounce off the floor a little bit, but when you look at the amount of debt that's been accumulated in the world, the amount of money that still needs to be printed to prop up economies, I think the longer run inflation story is going to play out still. And if you think back to the financial crisis of 08, 09, it wasn't until a year after the risk, the volatility, passed by that then longer term impacts of all that money that was printed really took hold, and I think we went on a 5-6 year bull run. So I certainly think we'll have another leg to this gold story, and hopefully soon.
Absolutely. I see it the same way. Sandeep, thank you very much. We are at the 20 minutes as you predicted. I can't believe it. Fantastic.
Longer, but I think that gives you a good update as to where
No, that was really fantastic. Thank you very much. Highly appreciated. And it looks that, Osisko is in fantastic shape. You guys are doing a super great job. And I think the stock is poised for re-rating upwards, of course.
I think so too. Like last year was a good reset year for us. Created a lot of value. We're looking to take advantage of it this year. So all the best to you, Jochen. Thanks for your time, and to your listeners.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sandeep, also to you. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that was PDAC 2021, the update interview virtual here with Sandeep Singh, the CEO of Osisko Gold Royalties. And you heard it, the company is doing extremely well, despite COVID, of course, had a little bit of a setback last year also, but still the company is running on 94% cash margin. This is crazy good. And also the organic pipeline is really full and filled up and poised for a lot of growth in the future here. And they have already raised their guidance for next year by approximately 20% from last year's production, which is great. Also, I heard a little bit that maybe the dividend will rise, which is also great for the shareholders. And the company is virtually on a net basis really debt free and has a lot of firepower for good new deals. So I would suggest you really check out this fantastic company. Thanks for watching us, and bye bye from Switzerland.